thought you would get
cupcake,
excited
in a
about that
cupcake. In a cupcake.
We'll call the April 3rd Charter Review meeting to order. Cliff Shepherd.
Yes, Mayor, we're going to get right into it. This is my brilliant PowerPoint on the parking lot. You see, I even have the effects stuck in there. Got a parking lot for you, so you know what you're talking about. And what this is the issues, any issues that we don't decide during the course of the review of the entire articles of the charter. And in our case, at least based on my notes, there was only one issue that we didn't decide, and that's the scheduling of regular municipal elections. The pleasure of the commission is all I'm looking for, because I can draft whichever one you want, but there are implications, so I want to go through some of those with you. First, the current language is this, and this is what we've talked about before. I don't know, nor do I really need to know where it came from, but you see that the highlighted portion says that the city election shall be held on the first Tuesday of December, and nobody has done that since at least I've been here the first time around, and I don't know how much longer before that, but that's not been a thing for a while. I do not know the history of how we got over to March, but every other municipality has been in March for a while, so perhaps it was just the herd moving in a general direction. That's possible. I do not know. So what are the options? Well, these are options we've discussed. There's an option that's not on here, which is to have your own special election date and pay for the full freight of doing that. But the options we've discussed are November, with or without the presidential primary preference option. I underscore the word option, and the reason I say that is because what most cities have done is they've given themselves an option in a presidential primary year to move to that election date from whatever date they're on, even if it's earlier in March or whatever it might be. And the reason being for turnout. Typically, they think they'll get a better turnout this last election. I think some people have felt like that worked against because it was heavily weighted to one party versus another. And so other turnout might have been less than it otherwise would have been expected. So I put that on there it's always an option. If you want it, you can have it. If you'd rather not to have it, then you just take it out. That's up to you. March is another one that we've discussed, again, with or without the presidential primary preference option. In March, that's where municipal elections are now held for most all of the cities. I'm not going to say all of them because it certainly may be some I'm not aware of, but most of them happen in that time. A standalone municipal election, again, is where we would coordinate with the SOE, supervisor of elections, on a date that we want it, would be our date in our city at our expense. And again, you could also do that with or without the presidential primary preference option. What are the cons as we go down the list? For November, again, everything to do with this presidential primary may favor one party in primary years, again, as we think we learned from the last election turnout. So that's the same with March. And the other negative for a standalone is the cost. You bear all of the cost. And you may also have a lower turnout if it's just a municipal election, because people generally are less enthusiastic about going to the polls just to vote for city issues. So that, I think, that is a negative, but some people may disagree, and certainly I don't have a horse in the race.
But before you proceed from that slide, though, I mean, the con on the very first one is only for the parenthetic portion of that.
Correct.
If you did have that option.
Yes, and again, if you choose, even if you have it as an option, you'd still have to choose it.
Right.
So my point is, you could say, well, let's leave it as an option. Things may change, demographics may change, and we may decide to use it in a given year, or we may decide not to, or whatever. There may be other issues on the ballot where we think turnout's going to be driven in a way that's significant, like a state constitutional amendment or something like that. So there's possibilities, but that's that. Now, I sent you all an email, and I want to remind you of it. It was on March 20th, and if you haven't seen it or don't recall it, I had an interesting conversation with Steve Hines. I think Mr. Gilzian is the man who's got the title, but Mr. Hines is the one who knows what he's doing. And Mr. Hines said, look, we do not do November municipal elections. We have a policy. And I said, well, I didn't know about that policy, but okay. Well, what if we amend our charter and say it's in November? You have to do it then, don't you? And he goes, I'm not sure about that. So, but here's the answer. Yeah, they'd have to do it. If that's what our charter calls for, and there's a November election, the office would be in derogation of its duty if they didn't do it. And I will certainly go back and confirm that they have now come to the right conclusion by talking to their election lawyer, a guy I know named Nick Shanine. But I think they would prefer us not to do that. But if you chose November and I put it together and the voters pass it, then I'm 99% sure that November is when it would be, whether they like it or not. Again, March is where you see most of the municipal elections now. And the other thing that's significant about him saying we have a policy against November municipal elections is it came up in the context of me simply trying to ask the question, when would the deadline be for us to get our charter amendment on the ballot, charter amendments on the ballot for approval? I need to know the deadline so we can get you a finalized ordinance. And he goes, oh, you're not getting on in November. And that's when he mentioned this policy to me. And that's when I brought up, well, what if we put it in our charter? What would you do about that? I don't know about that. So that's how that goes. So no matter what I do, apparently, because we can't have it in the charter before a vote, we will not be able to, put these charter issues before the voters until March of 2025 under the current system. Once, however, we put it in the charter and if the voters approve it, then it would be in November unless somebody can show me how they can avoid doing what we're asking them to do when they're otherwise having an election. So that's essentially where we stand. And what I need from you on this issue is direction. Because this is the parking lot, we are not limited to this issue. And now that we know we have way more time than I anticipated, if you want to have other meetings to consider other issues, that is up to you all. We don't have any more scheduled meetings. I double checked with Ms. Bone, but I had put in the timeline the opportunity for a second one. And that was when I thought we would have a June deadline. We don't have a June deadline anymore.
Where
And
did
so
the original timeline come from?
it came from the fact that when I was on the Orange County Charter Review, which had a November election, Bill Cowles had established June or July as the deadline to get him the finalized ordinance, because they take that, they then put together draft ballots, they send them back for proofing, and then they send them out to the ballot printing company, and they set deadlines. Like in this past March election, the deadline, and I know this from Eatonville, the deadline to get the Eatonville amendments, all of which passed on the ballot, was December 12th. So you had roughly that time span of 3+ months to get on the ballot from the time you turn it in. And if you don't turn it on time, they are not going to get you on the ballot. And so that's why I was trying to get him to lock into, give me the specific date, and that's when he told me you're not going to go on in November.
Is that another one of those, that's my preference, or is there law or?
He said it's a policy.
I don't care what his feeling is.
Yeah.
But because if his feeling was, I don't want these things to be in November, but yet state law requires you to have it in November, I'm sorry about your feeling, but no, you're going to do it.
Look, I don't disagree with you. And again, that's why I ask you the question, well, if it was in our charter, what would you say? He goes, I'm not sure about that. So can I force the issue? Perhaps. When he said, we have a policy, I didn't ask him where it was in writing. I just accepted he said they have a policy. I'll be happy to find out, because again, we have time to get to the bottom of that issue.
City Clerk Bone, did you have something?
I did. I just wanted to say that Orlando does.
They're municipals? Yeah, and that's why I said, if we had it in our charter, how would you say no?
But is it November, is it the same as the presidential election, or is it a different? I think it's a different week.
Yeah, I don't know. Could be.
Well, I'll check that.
Yeah, for some reason, I think it's a weird
Might
date
be.
as well.
Might
I mean, I don't think it's.
And that would
I
fit
could
fall
be
in the
wrong.
category of the option 3, which is a standalone municipal election, which you can do if that's
Yeah,
what you
right,
choose.
Right.
But it seems to me the debate is between those 3, and if y'all to choose November, then I'll just go back and beat him up for a copy of the policy, and if we say do it, how are you going to say no? And then I'm sure that will end up in a phone call with Nick Shanine, in which we will discuss who's right and who's wrong and figure it out.
Well, I would like to explore the November option. See how far we can get there.
So when was last,
When was what, I'm sorry?
oh, theirs is 23. So yeah, it was November, but it
It
was
was
23.
November 7th. It
Yeah.
says
Yeah.
general election was
So it
November
wasn't, yeah,
7th.
it's not, I knew it was a,
They had an off day.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
off
they may
year.
have a standalone election day.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, November.
Okay. I got two. I got one more and I'm good.
Well, I have to say that from the get-go, so November for me.
Yeah, November.
All right, I will make an amendment. Now, what that will mean, and I'm not really sure, I have to go through and do the math on it, but there'll have to be some language about terms going until the next election based on the passage of the charter amendment, if you're passing the charter amendment, because since they now essentially end in whenever April, after the March election, there's going to have to be some language that addresses that, and I'll figure that out. My point is, it won't be like a policy decision. It's going to be an automatic. If you have in November, we're going to have dates that coincide with November, and I'll fix that. But unless anybody's got anything else for me, I'm good. You'll get from me an updated all changes document with a draft amendment for this particular issue, and any other adjustments, I'll make sure you see what those are. And the next step, based on timing, is preparation of an ordinance, first and second reading. And at that time, you can actually make further decisions, meaning that I'll put together all the things that I know that, or if I believe, where we want to see this change. The council manager, various other things. That'll be all put in the form of an ordinance. On first reading, you can say, never mind. We don't want this particular question, delete it, okay? But we want these other questions, okay? Or we have another issue we want to add. I don't know what it might be, but the point is, because it's a first and second reading, you can tell me at the first reading things you still want to change. So you don't get final until you voted on the second reading based on what you want to see. And then when you do that, if you approve that, then it goes to the supervisor of elections, and we are on that path.
So right now, we're only addressing a city manager form of government. And I have to say it really slow because I can't say it quick. But we're not addressing if we choose, because they're going to be able to choose strong mayor or city manager form of government. Am I correct?
No, not exactly. Because you have strong mayors, so they don't choose it. What they do is they decide not to adopt a council manager. However, the other thing that I think I got directed on, and if I'm wrong, you tell me, was that even, and this is in either or, if you reject the city manager form of government, do you wish the mayor's appointments to be controlled in some fashion like we discussed? And I can't remember what they were, but I wrote them down. I'm walking around, I can't remember them. But basically, because there were specific checks on hiring and firing and what is required to hire and what is required to fire on the positions that typically now are done by the mayor through that whole, thing we had with Mr. Rodriguez and
Right.
how you count all that stuff. So to clarify that, but it would be, you'd only be voting on that thing if you were voting against the council manager thing. Because the council manager thing, it's automatic. That's a part of council manager form of government.
Right.
And I mean, when I say automatic, all the changes would be consistent with that if they said yes. It'll be, if you say yes to this, the words will change from strong mayor to council manager. And then every other change that has to be there for that to happen would flow from that. But if you say no to council manager, then there's some tweaks based on this appointment and firing process that would be made, as an alternative question or a separate question, a contingent question, if you will.
Right, because.
Unless y'all change your mind. That's what I understand to be what you've asked me to do.
Yeah, because when I was looking at the minutes, Commissioner Smith had made a statement which I agree with, and that was, suppose we did not decide to go away from strong mayor, and the council wanted to have the opportunity to release the city clerk or the city attorney, could we change that power?
Yes. And that would be a separate amendment. But again, it wouldn't be consistent with council manager because it's automatic in the
Right,
council
it's
manager.
automatic.
And so you wouldn't need it as an additional amendment.
Okay, so, see, my concern is that if the majority were to vote that down, then we would revert back to that, we would come back to what we have, strong.
Correct.
Mayor. But within the strong mayor, we had.
There's a second
some-
amendment potential, and that would be to deal with this, who gets to hire and who gets to fire.
Right.
And I understood that as something that you wanted, as if they didn't like option A, then they would vote to see whether they liked option B, and they may not like either one. And by the time we get to the ordinance, I don't know if it all will be there. That will be all to tell me. Any more questions on anything?
I guess my question is not about what we're going to put on the ballot. My question is, obviously, we've got 8 people in the room that very little, input from the community.
Correct.
I want more input, and I don't know how we get there. I mean, it's not your job, and it's not, I was looking behind you whether Rob was here, but my question is, how do we get more input to find out what the public really wants?
This is a question I get asked a lot, and I don't have a great answer. Part of an answer could be don't have meetings in the daytime, but these meetings haven't been in the daytime. They've been at 5 o'clock. Part of the answer would be do a worse job, make people matter, and they'll show up. But I mean, I'm honestly, and when I tell you I don't have the magic bullet, it is my considered opinion, which many people would disagree with. But if nobody is coming to fuss at you, it's probably because things are okay. And if only a few people are coming to fuss at you, probably because things are okay. And if a lot of people are fussing at you, you better rethink. But again, I recognize that is because I sit in a lot of cities and I hear the same, well, how come no people don't come out? Because they're thinking you guys are doing okay. And I think that's the answer, because trust me, when they're mad, you hear from them.
So when is, let me throw this idea at you. So when is our drop dead date to get it in November? And what I'm thinking is, we send out 17,000 water bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we could easily put in a sheet for pennies on the.
Yeah, and you could have it. You could have another call the whole thing and like an open forum, discuss charter amendments or anything somebody's interested in.
They're not going to show up for that. They're not showing up for this. So I mean, I'm just thinking if we put it in the water bill, if I've got enough time to do it.
Yeah, well, then you could put it in the water bill. That's what I'm saying. That's why I was trying to get him to tell me what I can tell. He didn't tell me because he was saying you can't be on there.
Okay.
But I can go back and say, well, if I could be on there, when is the deadline?
Right.
And again,
Okay.
what I expect him to tell me is either the last couple of weeks of June or the first week of July. I think that's what I recall from the charter, Orange County Charter. So it's in that ballpark for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to use that riff off that same logic, but I mean, I would venture to guess that everybody in this city cares about their tax dollars and where that money is spent. Is it being spent correctly? But yet we don't have any participation in the budget process either. So
Yeah.
like if we're
They
just
never
after
come out.
if we're just after cheeks in the seat, like I don't know that that's really gonna get us anywhere versus.
Well,
again,
I can't say that, well, I think it's a misrepresentation that we aren't getting feedback. We may not get it here specifically in this meeting, but it's almost every day or every other day that we're either seeing it on social media, somebody's texting, calling, you're out at the store. I mean, it's not the job of the residents, it's our job to get out and continue to ask, and that's what we are voted in to do and representing them. So,
I mean, I use social media. I just recently put a post to tell them there's a city charter. I asked them, I even kind of directed, go on the city website, read out bios, I mean, the truth is, most people rely on social media for just everyday news. So
That's absolutely true. And I will say this, I'm assuming, similar to how you said when you answer one council person, make sure everyone else is copied, that when y'all have gotten citizens inquiry about charter review, you have provided it to me. This is how many emails I've been sent.
Yeah.
2.
Well, I mean, and it's weird that we want to elicit feedback at this point, like, and this isn't meant to throw anybody under the bus up here, but unless we've all submitted our survey questions related to the annexation survey that we wanted to put out,
Yeah,
then don't tell me that you want to hear from people by inserting survey questions into a water bill, because it's disingenuous. I mean, we're elected. We decided through your council to do this at a council level. We're all duly elected, and we make the decisions up here as a representative of the people that voted us into office.
And again, just so for anybody who's listening at home and doesn't remember the rationale for that, it's because ultimately the decision on what goes on the ballot for a charter review is y'all's anyway. And when you turn it over to just a citizen panel, what you end up a lot of times doing, to the anger of citizens who don't necessarily understand what's okay and what's not okay, is saying, well, that can't go on the ballot because it's not lawful, along the lines of what you had asked me earlier in a prior email. And that's becomes now you're the bad guys because you just basically said, yeah, but that doesn't work. And so that's what I've learned from the process. So by inviting participation, make sure it's open, post all the information, which has been done. You know, could you do more? I guess you could send it, you could mail everything in the flyers to the water. I don't have a good answer because I sit here as a guy who goes to meetings 4 to 5 nights a week and multiple times a day. And it's not an uncommon question. In my own community of Gotha, which is unincorporated, I have zonings that are affected me across the street and I do not go to the meetings, partly because I can't stand any more meetings. But the point is, I got things to do. I just hope the other guys do their job and it'll all work out. That's all I can do.
Okay.
So I don't want to discredit those that do come to our
Yes.
chamber, because it is because of them through social media that I kind of stay
Yeah.
abreast of what the community wants, because a lot of our constituents that come to our chamber have a social media following. Some of them have thousands
Yeah.
following them. So I don't want to discredit them by saying, well, they're the only 8 that come. They come here and they actually take the information
Sure.
from here. And I appreciate that they put it on their social media, giving information, because I see how many people are following them. And to continually discredit social media is disingenuous, because most people rely on social media. When I go to the supermarket, and I do everything in Apopka, because I feel that to stay connected to the community, I do everything in the community. And half the time, a lot of the constituents are saying, oh, I read this on social media. Is it true? They really want more clarification. And so, you know, I get to hear that, and then I go back and say, well, let me see what they read on social media, so that I can kind of either just give them the right information or direct them where they can get the information. So social media is important, and I really appreciate those who do come here and do share the information here without any opinions, because some of them just put the information straight forward. So I feel they've been talking about the city charter. They've been talking about our local government, and I do
agree.
get a feedback.
I also think it's important to recognize that people that come, notwithstanding that it's hard to know what number, they are a representative of a larger number.
They
I don't know
are.
what the number is, but I know it's more than them.
Yes.
And so, I've watched you all listen attentively, maybe not agree with everybody who comes up here, but you're hearing from them.
I am.
You know, I forget the journalist who had a comment, it might be Grizzard, saying the critic's always right, or something like that was his first line. And so I think it's wise to take in that information and input and see if there needs to be a course correction or an adjustment or whatever, or a consideration of whatever. But in terms of physically getting people into the meetings, I don't know that there's a good solution to that. So I think what you have to do is think, okay, this person may represent 10, 100, or 1,000. And so I need to listen, take it in, and then make judgment on what I should do about what I'm hearing. Because that's, I think, what most people end up in your positions doing.
Yes.
But I think it will be beneficial if we explain to the residents what a strong mayor is.
Yeah.
Because many of them don't even know who the mayor is. That's more what a strong mayor is.
Yeah.
So
If
I
you
think
want
it
another
would be
workshop, I mean,
beneficial
that's-
if we somehow or
built in.
another was able to convey that information as to what is the difference between a strong mayor and a city manager. So when it's on the ballot, that they know what they're voting for.
Sure.
If they vote.
And like I said, on the timeline I set up, there were 2 potential parking lot meetings. This is the first one. We haven't scheduled the second one. But because we don't even have to call it a parking lot, just call it an open forum to discuss any issues of concern on the charter, come for information. We'll explain if you want to, or the lawyer will make a presentation about the things that are being considered to be put on the ballot, and then let the public tell you what they think about those items. Again, I don't, it's however you guys want to do it. And it can be as early as whenever you want to set it, or can be significantly later, depending on whether we can figure out a way to convince them that we should be able to be on the November ballot.
All right.
One other thing I want to discuss, and then two, I want to possibly have more discussions once we have feedback from public comment. The role of the vice mayor isn't really detailed, so I'd be interested to see if that is worth detailing. I don't know. I mean, because especially with a strong mayor, is it ceremonial? In what capacity, and in what scenarios there's a lot of variability there that I think would be worthwhile to define.
I'll go back and look, but the vice of pretty much anything is the sub for when the mayor or a chair, depending on what kind of body you are, is not available. And that inavailability can be caused by a number of different things. It can be caused, like, for example, in the case of the recent Orange County commissioner who has been suspended, an absence, and if she had been the mayor, then the vice mayor would take the spot that she's in until there's an election to fill that position. And that is typically, it's like a built-in succession plan, if you will. And in terms of duties, it's you essentially read the mayor's duties, and now I'm sitting in the mayor's chair. You know, that's essentially how it goes. But if you think it needs more clarification, I'll do whatever
Well, I guess it would literally mean that they take over the day-to-day operations, the CEO of the,
you want. 100%.
Wow. Okay. I mean,
Again, depending on is it absence for a meeting because somebody was sick or someone was on vacation, or is absence because hospitalization, accident, removal from office temporarily based on a suspension? It depends on the reason. So those day-to-day decisions you're concerned about are going to be more likely to be the case if you have something that's other than, well, he missed a meeting.
Sure.
But yes, in theory, if there was going to be an extended absence, or even one for a week or 2 weeks where decisions need to be made and directions have to be given, then if the mayor was unable, because they can make decisions long distance, that's not a problem. But if the mayor was unable, say he was disabled in a foreign country, then you'd have whoever the vice mayor was making those decisions until he was able to take the reins again. Similar to how the vice president, if they go into surgery for a period of time while he's under anesthesia and unable to make a decision, then yes, the vice president can launch nukes. That's the way it works.
So I guess, is there a triggering moment, event that would tell us what that is? So, you know, foreign country can't communicate. That doesn't mean that they're unable to do their duties. They just can't send an email right now or something. So I guess that just defining it may be possibly advantageous.
Sure. I'll be happy to take a look at it. No problem.
Okay.
Any other
Public
questions
comment?
for Cliff? Not, we'll have public, anybody wants to speak from the public?
Albert McKimmey, 3603 Golden Gem Road. Just one question, and when we are discussing who can make changes to the charter, there is a mechanism where the public can make changes to a charter by providing a certain amount of votes to get that on the charter. I don't think that's something that's been made clear, and if that's the case, it's not just solely on the heads of the commissioners. There is another mechanism for the public to take action if they're not satisfied with what you guys come up with. The other thing is that, let's get back to mechanisms and triggerings. It was Brian that gave me the idea about something being triggered. And I did write to some of the commissioners and ask, is it possible that in our charter we can set up a mechanism where a number of residents who are capable of voting can petition the city with, say, 250 or 500 votes to make a declaratory judgment on something without the commissioners actually having to vote on it. So that in a situation whereby we're unhappy with something, like we could go back to the Michael Rodriguez episode, there was nothing that we could do while you commissioners sat here and there was indecision. But if it were possible for the residents through a petition with a number of votes could go straight to the city clerk, if it was written into the charter that we had the right to ask for a declaratory judgment, that would be beneficial.
Okay, I would like to, Nikki McGuire for the record, to touch on two things. One, I will make a strong suggestion, as Mr. Shepherd said, about people not coming in. I do go back and I look at the meetings on YouTube. One of the suggestions I would strongly suggest is turning off the cameras to the general audience. Many people I've spoken to, they don't mind coming out and supporting our city, but they do not want to be constantly, without their knowledge that, like, they might be down looking at their phone doing something and they're being caught on camera the entire time. The camera should be focused on you guys and who's at the podium. That will help encourage. Then also we have to consider to, like, I know in my household, I have 3 of my adult kids who are out of the house, but they're military, their home of record is Apopka. I make sure they do vote in every election. They do, because they have that right to vote absentee ballot as military, and this is their home of record. So people who are not here does not mean they're not interested or they're not. I do read social media. I try my best to control myself and not respond to some of the comments, but the voice is clear. Why we had such a low turnout at the last election, wouldn't say, but does not mean there isn't problems that people are not complaining. I'm disappointed in people complaining on social media and they're not coming out. Even if you don't attend the meetings, you can still vote. With that being said, I would like to strongly encourage the public to not look at who's currently in the seats. I'm a strong advocate for the youths of Apopka because they are our future leaders. They are the ones that's going to be sitting in those chairs at some day. So I would strongly, I'm not going to say whether I'm for a strong mayor or against a strong mayor, because I don't want anything to be held against me personally, but I will encourage everyone, when you go to vote, do not vote based on your emotions. Do not vote based on who's currently in those chairs, but vote based on the future of Apopka. What we don't like now, what do we want to see? Where we want Apopka to go? How is it going to benefit not just us as future senior citizens, but the next generation as our future leaders? Thank you.
John Cloran, 593 Usler Road here in Apopka. I think I've communicated with each of you commissioners at different times about different subjects. But dealing with election, are you aware of how many of your constituents did not know where they were voting, where they were supposed to vote? Did you bother to ask did anybody call you and ask? Because I know calling the election office, I found out where I was going to be voting, wasn't where I normally vote. And on top of that, I had to ask for a City of Apopka ballot. And when I asked them what would happen if they had a charter and you put it out there in a general election, people who were in Apopka, there were people wanting to vote for Apopka who have an Apopka address but they're not residents. But you will have put this out there, for charter out there to be voted on. The residents have to know that they have to ask for that ballot, or they will not be given to them. It's not a give. All right? Thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we always, it's a dilemma for us that we direct all those, we put it on the website, we put it on the, in our newsletter about go to the Division of Elections, go to Supervisor of Elections to get your actual site, because, if we mess up a site or you're in the wrong, at the wrong site, then you've got to go find it. It is confusing. We got the early voting, which is obviously the VFW. But when it gets to the regular, the day of, it's, I don't know, 14 maybe. I can't remember how many sites there are that you could vote. And just because you're voting at a site doesn't mean you're even a Apopka resident. You could be a county resident or a city resident. It absolutely is confusing. So I understand your
To answer
frustration.
your question, there were 17 sites here in Apopka,
17, okay.
compared to 2 during the regular city election. And I was over here at this one, and I talked to several people that were still trying to find out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon where they were supposed to vote.
Yeah.
Now, whose problem is that? Is it the cities? Because we tagged it on. You also had a presidential primary that people didn't care about anymore. And I'm an independent, and I'll admit that for years, I didn't vote. I lost a school board person lose their seat because I did not go vote for him because I was an independent. My idea was I couldn't vote. I wasn't asked to vote. You have to be a party representative to be able to vote in a primary. That's what gets pushed, not independents. So independents a lot of times just walk away, just so you know. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. I want to say
Name and address.
Pardon me?
Name and address for the record.
Oh, Tim Ford, Lakeside Apopka. I want to say I came up here particularly because of you, Commissioner Velasquez. On the last charter review, like they said, I was the online person. I watch on YouTube, the city council meeting. Every now and then I put my head in the door when I figure I can handle it in here. And I say that not jokingly because we say, why aren't the people here? There's so much toxicity. There's so much that go on in this chamber that people are afraid to come. I heard the young lady say, I don't want to say my view. And a lot of us don't. I'm one of them who didn't. But if all of us stay that way, then we still let a few people control the city. I'm the president of my HOA. Let me use this for example. And Facebook, I recommend none of you all try to run this city by Facebook opinions. Number one, you don't even know if they're city residents. And in my community, I got 6 residents out of 301 that stay on Facebook, and they have everybody say, oh, our community is not happy. But I got 250 that email me and say, keep sticking it to them. So we can't go by Facebook. And I'm being real with you. But I had to get up. That's my point to you. Because you said we need to hear from the public. I was out working there and we're 98% caught up. And I ran home, put on a decent shirt and ran up here because I wanted you to see me as a part of this community. To say, number one, Commissioner West, I don't know where you were going with it, but I'm going to piggyback off of it when you asked about the vice mayor. To me, that's a sign to say that this whole process may very well be being rushed. I know some of you may have some time limits to get it done, but it may be being rushed. If we don't know what's the role of the vice mayor, is there a role? This thing needs to slow down. Let's get some things going. My second opinion on that is, with all the fighting that goes on up here, that's a lot of it is personal. I don't even think y'all should have been the one trying to do the charter review. It should have been an independent commission from the community that we know you're not retaliating against each other, which Ray Charles can see it to me. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And when we talk about this city manager versus strong mayor, why don't y'all just work together? If you need to tame the mayor a little bit, pull a little bit from him. Make him come to you for approval on certain things. That's how you work as a team, rather than bring in somebody from Utah that don't know nothing about Apopka and trying to get us to order snowplows in the middle of the summer. To me, it just really don't make sense. As far as the voter turnout, it might have been sad, but let me say this. Everyone who vote is over the age 18. So that means you have a choice. And it's not, you can say they don't care and all of that stuff, or they didn't know where to go and all of that. Listen, my 26-year-old daughter called me, Dad, where do I go vote? Who do you want me to vote for? And I told her who I wanted to vote for, because I've taught her the importance of voting. So I encourage you all to really slow it down. Try to see, is there anything that Mr. Shepherd can put in here that we can be a unit of one in leadership in here? And to the mayor's point, Commissioner Velasquez said last meeting that I looked at, she said, well, the public is here. And that camera scanned, and I'm like, them 6 people, I need to get up there. Not that you all are not, but it's bigger than that. And I was one that's sitting home because I'm scared, which I'm sure in the next commission meeting, I'll be brought up in public comment. And so I just hope it don't come to that. We need to do better. We're a great city. Do I think we need to improve? Yes. But do I think we just need to start operating in some of the ways we are? I don't know if that's the right move. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now, did you come because I posted something on
No.
Facebook?
I came because I watched the meeting on YouTube,
Right.
and I just listened to you. Your questions are solid to me. They're the questions that need to be answered. Some don't even want the answers to questions. Some minds already made up. Let me just be real. We can sit in and have 20 more of these. But I'm appealing to you personally because I think that you listen to the community, you listen to the voters, you listen to the resident, and I want to believe you make a sound decision. That's why.
Do you know what? I want to thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We can have a strong mayor. We can have a city manager. But if you don't incorporate principles, integrity, honesty, accountability, respect, responsibility, morals, ethics, character, procedures, leadership, and laws, when we don't respect that, you can have any type of government you want. It's still going to be dysfunctional. The city attorney, when Commissioner Becker was asking you about putting something on the ballot in November, we expect you to have the law. We don't expect you to give us in your window, or maybe that's the truth. When you present to the council, we pay you to have the facts. That's what we pay you for. And that's what you should present. My heart goes out to each and every one of y'all because this is a challenging job. But that's why I say you have to be a special person to want to serve. If you don't want to serve the people, resign. This job is not for you. If you can't handle it, resign. This job is not for you. Having said that, I think each and every one of you commissioners should have a stipend, a half of what the mayor's pay is. I brought it up before. Because if you're going to get out and serve the community properly, it takes a lot of your time to go out and do that. If you're going to go out and vet things that are being brought that you have to make decisions on, it takes a lot of your time to do that. And as a city, we get what we pay for. If we want you to take care of us on a part-time basis, that's what we get. I think if you're sitting in that seat, it's a full-time job. To serve the people properly, it's a full-time job. And you should be compensated for that by the way of stipend. Information. How do we get information out to the people? Why do people don't care about coming in and voting?
Well, that's the trick of politics. The less people you have in, you do your groundwork, and you can control the majority. It's never been politician goal to have everybody participate. They don't want that. Because good will always outdo evil. Good. Commissioner Smith, you correct me if I'm wrong. Good will always outdo evil. And so the less people you know that may know that you're doing something that you ain't supposed to be doing, the better. So that's why I brought it up many a times. Go back and watch the videos when the mayor won with less than 10% of the registered voters. I brought it up. And I remember them, well, somebody next door, they only had this many turnout too, so it's okay. No, it's not. When you don't have the people participating, something is wrong. And we keep normalizing the abnormal. So we don't even care anymore. So how do you get people to show up? If you're gonna lead people, you gotta love people. And if you don't love people, you can't lead people. And people can read you. As soon as you open your mouth and make eye contact, they can read you whether you love them, whether you care about them or not. They can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Appreciate it.
They can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
In early voting, Mayor, when you change early voting, that shows the people how you cared about them.
Rogers back at 7 West Main Street. Well, my response to a lot of things that have been said, if we never have this open discussion to actually look at other options to lead forward, where would we go? Because sometimes people just think this is the way things have always been and they just go down the same path. So having an open discussion on a city council mayor, whatever the case may be, I think is advantageous because I think it holds accountability at this point. Because if we have discussion, you know that things can be changed. Otherwise, people don't know. And something that you just mentioned, Commissioner Smith, as far as illustrating what's the difference between the two, yeah, that can be done. But there again is how do you go about doing that? Because we all know you're still not going to reach every resident that's here that can vote. So if you can put it in a palatable way to where at least if they go to some type of resource, whether it's something online or something that's sent out, that they have the ability to look at those two and make a decision for themselves. But there again, I understand there's not a lot of people that shows up, but that's almost like any city council meeting, right? People show up when they're upset about certain things, which is natural. But there again, if you want to have an open dialogue of how do you move forward, which I think is really the discussion on looking at different avenues of where we want to go, future tense, that's what's important. So my thing is, and what I believe a lot of time people feel is, you don't want to come up here and say something and then basically be retaliated against. So for me, whatever form of government I go to alleviate that, that's the form I want to take. So because you have the golden touch and you can make stuff stop and go, sometimes people are afraid to go against that type of, retaliation. So I know we have had issues that happened over the past couple of years that residents came and complained, and then they feel like they get code enforcement on them. People don't want to feel that way because if they're coming to address what their issue may be, it's just a matter of you guys as public officials hearing them and then doing what the best you can do. I don't think it should be an adversarial type of position from this side to that side. I think we should all work together. So, whether right or wrong indifference, we can agree to disagree, but let's move in a fashion that we all win. We all want to see Apopka be great in the long term. Right? So if that's what we're working for, that's the only thing we're asking. People have rebuttals or discussions or arguments, but there again, how do you move forward and become better? I think that's really what this is about. It's not right or wrong or what form is better, but let's have an open discussion so we know what we want to do leading forward. And I just really think that's what it's about. It's not really about 2024, it's about 2035, 2050. So because if you look at it right now, the county, they're working on a 2050 plan. We've heard things about economic development directors, comprehensive plans, strategic plan. We've had all these discussions, but it's just been taught. But what are we actually getting to move forward in a manner that we can say this is what a city of Apopka is trying to become? And I think that's what we all should be here working to work forward to. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So next steps,
And I want to make a comment real quick.
Sure.
Because I think Mr. Beckett said that very eloquently, but, to other comments that were made, I think it's healthy that there is, it's very subjective when people say toxicity or, discourse or whatever. Friction up here should be welcomed. And I see you shaking your head, but yeah, well, both gentlemen shaking their head. And to say that, mine's made up, it means I've made a decision. Now, whenever I make a decision, I typically will defend that with fact. Now, let's debate the facts. But let's debate the facts instead of just saying that, we make rash decisions and it's toxic up here. Because again, if you go through each one of our agendas and really looked at every single vote that we take from a percentage basis of how much stuff that we disagree with at a toxic level is very little. But Mr. Beckett nailed it on the head too. It's even if we don't get to a decision point this month or next month or the month after, it sounds like we've got some more runway than we thought into 2025. But the fact that we're sitting up here and opening the book and saying, hey, let's look at this, inspect it, and potentially make changes for the better is very healthy. Whether that's this council, again, I'll go back to our council, gave us counsel that this is the most efficient way to do it, and we all went into that fact. And we're here where we're at right now. Now there's going to be, when I exit, likely this is my last charter review, and I'm sure that garners some applause from the audience. But my successor may have a completely different opinion about and approach about what we're doing up here, and that's then going to be her responsibility to try and lead that effort up here. There's going to be things that she disagrees with. Any one of the 5 of us, is she supposed to, speak nicely and courteously? No, I want her to be aggressively fight for her position, as she should. And I can't worry about people's interpretation of bedside manner up here on council. But I just wanted to say that before I speak my piece. Because I think what we're doing up here is healthy, even though we get contentious at times. Sorry.
No, I definitely just want to echo that same sentiment. I appreciate everyone that came up and spoke. This is the whole point of this, is to get public input as well. So I appreciate that, regardless of whether you agree with me, disagree with me, like me or not like me. I think it's very valuable that we hear from the public because, again, we represent our residents, and that's the whole point of this long term. And to echo Commissioner Becker as well, I said this during my campaign because everyone is trying to say otherwise, but friction's not a bad thing. It is good. It's what makes fire. It's what grows us, and biblically, iron sharpens iron. It's not flowers and dandelions that sharpens your sword. It's another sharp object making you stronger. So that's what makes our city stronger. The debates and the conversations and the differences of opinion. It's strong and it's valuable, and it creates value within our city long term. The 2050 plan comes from friction, not from making sure that we're all smiling at each other and happy the whole time. It comes from making the hard decisions and having the hard conversations, asking the hard questions. So I think it's been a really productive exercise for sure, and I look forward to hearing even more public input because, again, every time I go out, there's some conversation about the charter and preferences and things like that, and I know even though we may be at just the last of the parking lot, I'm sure we'll have more that we'll be discussing and changing down the road. So appreciate it.
Mr. Smith?
I'm done.
Good. Mr. Velasquez?
Done.
All right. Well, we're,
Waiting for
Do
you.
we want to schedule another meeting
Sure.
now?
sure.
And if so, when do we want to schedule it? And what do you want me to put on the agenda?
Well, I think the next meeting because now that the parking lot is cleared, I guess, so to speak, you've got kind of your changes document. So the next step for you, if this were to go to a place where, hey, you're trying to get to a vote, which it's not going to the next meeting, obviously, but your next step is to add kind of the substance to the headline, correct?
Yes. Well, it is to take, for this issue, which is the only one that hasn't already gotten the substance, and as well as to look at the vice mayor issue and see if there's something I should provide there for clarification to solve whatever issues that might be. And that would be included now in the all changes document, which you've seen. And if you go to it now, you'd see a provision that says parking lot for this thing.
Yeah.
So that language, I would come up with the modifications that need to make this work. I'd also modify anything that has to be modified to make the terms work regarding the terms of office so that they would come around in November if that thing passed, because it's all going to have to fall together at the same time. And there would be no reason, unless y'all wanted to do anything else after that except blend the whole thing into a series of titles, questions, and summaries with vote yes or no, or for change or against. And that's a part of an ordinance that has 3 or 4 segments that said the next general election, called by, this is going to be sent to the voters. And then there's the first reading and second reading. So if you did no other work in terms of a meeting, that would be the sequence of events. So what I'm asking about, because there will be automatic meetings on the ordinance when it's just put on the agenda. What I mean about a meeting is, do you want to have another open forum, another I don't know, town hall, whatever you want to call it, and invite more participation and see if you get any that triggers, hey, have the lawyer do this or look at that. That's up to y'all. If you want to do it, I thought we'd schedule it while I'm standing here.
Yeah, why I was asking is if there's enough substance, because to Commissioner Smith's point is really educating folks about, okay, the ramifications of what has been discussed up to this point. So we've gotten to a point, you've got a number of things that, generally speaking, the council has shaken its head in the affirmative that we want to pursue this. Mm-hmm. You've got because if people come to the council chambers for that next session, and you've got someone who's very high level thinker, okay, we may just be able to describe the nuance between a strong mayor and a city manager or what have you. But if you have someone that double clicks a little bit more detail oriented, you can actually educate on all the ramifications of the sub kind of amendments that go to support that.
Sure.
So I think you have it detailed from a sense of you have all the pieces that comprise the parts, and then it's an education opportunity as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. I just need to know. Then again, we don't have to schedule it now. But if you want to schedule it now, we're here. And if you want to schedule it at a future meeting, that's also fine. Just tell me what you want to do.
Well, I mean, to Commissioner Smith's point, maybe we outline some of the changes, and then you put a description on what that changes will do, and pros and cons if you want to, and let's at least get it up on our website so people have.
Let me clarify something that's important for everybody to understand. Once we are at the point of putting something where we know it's going on the ballot, we cannot do anything other than provide facts only. So even my opinions about pros and cons, we can't do that. And the reason we can't is because it's essentially campaigning for the issue.
Right.
One way, even though in my mind it's pros and cons, that's not the way the Florida law sees it.
Correct.
So if we get to the point of this is going on the ballot, here it is, read it. They can ask you all questions, but the government can't say anything about it.
I mean, I would say like in general terms, strong mayor, city
Right.
manager.
Correct. What's the difference? I can explain all of
Term
that.
limits, you could say,
Sure,
these cities
absolutely.
have,
And as long as it's before we're finalizing
Yeah,
the ordinance,
yeah.
no problem. But when you said put it on the website, that's what got my attention, because that's where, okay, it's like Joe Friday and Dragnet, just the facts.
yeah. No, I think we, is that,
I can live with that.
yeah. So if you could put together
Sure.
the major points, and then, and then we'll put that in at the bottom of that post, we'll put some, anything else that, we haven't considered, please, respond or something. But yeah, I think I guess we got 6 or 8 things. Like, I don't think anybody has any, like the commissioner versus councilman. I don't know if that matters, but
No.
the
The substantive stuff.
yes. So I think that would be a good start. And then, do you then want to, I'd like to get that out there for a couple
Yeah.
of weeks and then see where that takes us. And then we could,
You can
come back.
It's that at the next council meeting or anytime after, as long as we're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
running a
So-
foul of any deadline with the SOE, it's completely up to you guys.
So do you think, I mean, what's a time?
Oh, well, I'm so used to this every 2-week turnaround thing that I could certainly do it within that time frame. And so you'll have it. And then I don't know exactly what the date of our next council meeting. It's like it's if you wanted to have it at the next council meeting and then say, okay, when did you say this, ma'am? Is it
The 17th.
17th of April? Yeah, I could certainly have it for you by then. And then if you say, okay, based on this, we want to now schedule call it a workshop, call it a whatever you want to call it. Yeah, you could do that.
Well, and so I just want to finalize two quick things because I'm fine with all that. The detailed kind of role of vice mayor. Are you guys okay with just getting some verbiage on that, just to kind of understand? I just think it would help to articulate. It was brought up as well, and I just think that will help to refine any ambiguity that may be there.
Yeah, I went back and read it, and I actually know what you're talking about because what it says is the vice mayor takes over the meeting in the absence of the mayor. It doesn't say the rest of the stuff that I said, but that's what would happen.
Correct. Yeah, I think just detailing it a little bit and I don't having a trigger or mechanism there.
I guess it's not really specific to, well, it's not specific to vice mayor, it's just like a succession plan for the mayor position. And through that verbiage, you reference the vice mayor, but really, that's just until such time as the triggering of the rest of the charter in terms of filling vacant positions on the council.
Yes,
That
and if it's a
person-
truly vacant position as opposed to
Right.
a temporary absence based on illness or whatever.
But even if it was an absence that led to a full-time absence, it's not like the vice mayor would finish that term. If it's beyond, the rest of our charter would trigger to say if it's beyond
Correct.
6 months or a year or whatever the
Correct.
case might be, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Well, and we can, I can send, I know Chuck, it's just funny, he just printed out yesterday or today, Orange counties, which goes into a little more detail. It also goes into decorum and some other things. I'll have him send that to y'all tomorrow, and it goes into a little bit more detail than maybe our charter does, but
Okay.
I'll have him send that to you.
And the other thing too that was brought up and that I just haven't heard yet, and take it or leave it either way, but is an additional stipend. Are we bound by state statute for how commissioners are paid? Or walk us through that, I guess, please.
You are entitled to not only, assuming the charter allows it, that's a different question. So if the say is, hey, are we allowed to have a stipend? The answer would be you have all powers that are not otherwise taken away from you by general law, whether your charter provides for it. We went through the whole charter. I don't remember anything that says y'all get paid a stipend or whatever. I can't remember. I honestly don't have it committed to memory, but I don't remember anything like that. But
When you
yeah,
mean stipend, what do you mean by
Yeah,
stipend?
define stipend.
It was referenced, so I don't know if it can come in different forms because I know we have our
Your discretionary.
discretionary. So I don't know if that's increased in some capacity or if
Well, it
there's.
did. It went from 3,000 to 10.
I understand that. I didn't know if there. I mean, we all know that we're getting asked every day for more and more money. So that
Sure.
that's not that money. Although it's more. So it just depends. I mean, that it can look like that. It can look like a different
I assumed the stipend meant
in a payment
to
form
you
or
all.
something. Yeah, I mean, so
And various councils have small ones, have zero, and have significant ones. So it really, and at the end of the day, to answer the question in advance, is that a conflict of interest to you to vote on? Nope, it's not. That's been determined a long time ago because when you're elected officials, you always have to vote on budgets, which includes payments and raises and all of that.
okay.
I think how we get our salaries is based on the population.
Yes, 25 cents
Yeah.
per
Maybe.
residence.
Which was like newly discovered because the first 2 or 3 years that I sat on this council, it was the same. And then all of a sudden, one budget season, it was like, oh, we found this ordinance where there's this triggering effect of salaries.
And it's not in the charter.
What's that?
It's not in the charter, it's an ordinance.
Yeah, there's some
It's-
sort of
it's
ordinance
somewhere.
that ties it to the population growth, which is,
Interesting.
perverse incentive, right?
Yes, what it says, 25 cents.
Approve a lot of
Per
development, get a raise.
That's worthy of inspection, right?
Yeah. Well, it's an ordinance, it's much easier to change in the charter.
Well, exactly. It is an ordinance.
Yeah.
All right.
Because I think, well, I just want to put a finer point on that. It was brought up, especially when I was running that, the pool of applicants for commissioner would be, I feel, much bigger if you had a salary that provided them the time to be able to do this. I'm not saying it needs to affect me personally, but it allows additional commissioners down the road for a large city like this. We could have, maybe it's a teacher or a policeman, a firefighter, whoever it may be, that they can quit their day job and actually focus on this full time. So it was brought up. I thought it was worth a merit for sure, because it would open the pool to different demographics, to different ages, to everything. It really, to different backgrounds. I mean, it opens up a lot, our pool of commissioners at that point. So just a thought.
All right, anything else? Not, we'll close the public hearing.